I've just started the recording and here we go, Anna. It's over to you, Kanban Maturity Model.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to New Zealand, to Australia, Silke, Daniel. It's great to be here with you. From my side, it's good morning. I'm just joking that your son just has arrived here to Europe, Poland, and Germany. So hello, neighbors. And as Silke said, my name is Ania. I'm product manager of Kanban Maturity Model. So this is my main activity at Movies Group. And for David Jenderson School of Management, I'm teaching Kanban. So the classes that Silke, Daniel are teaching, and also some other like KMM, KCP, and the new class Kanban for Design and Innovation. So if you're interested, just let us know. And today I'm going to tell you about Kanban Maturity Model and implementing Kanban by numbers. You will see probably few pictures that are rather hermetic and we don't share them publicly, but I hope it will be interesting for you. So maybe let's start. Just kind of disclaimer, this presentation, this webinar will be mixed. There will be some basic stuff that you might probably heard about already and also some advanced things. So anytime you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section and we'll cover them at the end. I shouldn't talk more than 30 minutes. I don't want to get you bored. So let's start. This is the first picture you don't see normally publicly. And what you can see here is actually the summary of the receipt that a gentleman called Dragos Dumitriou, which you should probably know already, sent to his finance department in Microsoft, to reconcile the dinner that he had with David Anderson. It was almost 17 years ago. So we'll have 17th anniversary this year, October. And this dinner actually started it all. So in 2004, after one of the conference where David was a speaker, and Dragos back then was project manager of the famous XIT team in Microsoft. You may know this team because it's one of our case study during the KST class. So as you know, this team in all of the competitions for the worst team in Microsoft, they always won. And Dragos really wanted to do something about it. And he was listening to David back then. And he approached him, they attended this dinner, and they discussed this whole situation in XIT. And actually, this was our first Kanban implementation. This is how Kanban method was born. Of course, back then, there was no Kanban method yet. But this is where it comes from. And as I said, it's more than 16 years, almost 17 years already this year. We'll be celebrating the Kanban maturity next year. And saying that we really see that Kanban has come of age, it's almost adult. And over these 16 plus years, and when I say we, I mean the Kanban community, we have learned a lot. And Kanban method is no longer a small child. It also went through its own growing cycle and growing period. And now it's almost adult yet teenager. And when it all started, the community shared the practices and we all learned from each other. And on this learning path, something what's called right now the Kanban Maturity Model was born. And what you can see here on this picture, and maybe I have some props with me today. So this is this book. If you decide to buy it, this is how it looks. It's almost 500 pages. So it's Kanban Maturity Model version 1.2. Just to compare, this is Kanban Maturity Model version 1.0 that was released 4 years ago in 2017. So what you have here, I will put it like this. So what you have here, this thinner book, is already part of Kanban Maturity Model 1.2. And if we say that KMM 1.0 was our MVP that was released this 4 years ago, and of course, there were a few years when it was prepared, so our KMM is like 8-9 years old. Over these 4 years between 1.0 and 1.2, many people around the world, there was an official beta program, but also other people who are not part of the beta program, just took this Kanban maturity model and they started to use it in their organizations with whether they were Kanban coaches, consultants, teachers, but also practitioners around the world. Started to use this Kanban maturity model. If you don't mind to mute yourself, would be very helpful.
I'm just trying to mute everybody. Yeah, now I got the right person. No.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Kanban Maturity Model. Right now, as I said, this is version 1.2, and we treat it as the final version. Final, not final. I mean, final, not MVP anymore. But there is already some content from, as we call it, Kanban Maturity Model 1.3 that is already available, and you are not able to find it in the book, but you are able to access it already. And I will tell you at the end of the presentation how you can access Kanban Maturity Model 1.3 already today. And of course, except for the book, we also have infographic posters. There are 16 of them right now. You can download them too. And again, I will show you where you can do it. And some of these posters are here on my wall. So you can also print them out and use as the wallpaper. They're really nice and colorful. So what the Kanban Maturity Model is all about. What you can see here is one of our posters. And Kanban Maturity Model, as Silke told you, it maps 7 levels of the organizational maturity. So this is not Kanban that matures, this is organization that matures. We just use Kanban, Kanban method, Kanban practices, and how Kanban describes culture and outcomes to help organization to grow. But this is organizational maturity, not Kanban maturity, which is rather important thing to remember. Going very quickly through the list of these 7 levels and what they actually mean. And I will go from the yellow one and like this to the navy blue. So level 0 is oblivious, and you can characterize it as my way of working. So at maturity level 0, there is even no concept of the team. Everyone is working as separated, isolated individuals, focused on the tasks. There is no synergy, there is no collaboration. The only value that we observe here is the achievement. So people are just proud of being, of the fact that they have completed work, but actually nothing more. So this is the level when individuals work on their own tasks. There is no concept of something bigger, even the team. When we think about the team, this is maturity level 1 already. So we call it team focused. And this is where people start to collaborate, where people start to make work transparent. And there are some initial acts of leadership. So there is at least one person who decides that we should do something about it. We shouldn't be anymore the individuals. Maybe it's worth to work together. And if you think about maturity level 0 and 1, these are the levels where you have a customer calls and she requests a very specific person to do the work. So customer has its pet, and so this pet is a person who is already well known to the customer, and customer is sure that if this person takes care for the task will be delivered. Otherwise, the chance that the task will be delivered is rather low. So maturity level 0, individual, maturity level 1, team focused. But although there is a customer, the consciousness of the customer within the team, among team members, is not very high yet. And maturity level 2 is when we start to think about the customers. So the concept of the customers appear, and we start to realize that there are some needs of the customer, there is demand, and we should do our best to satisfy this demand, but result is not yet very stable, not very predictable. We call it never the same result twice. And if you think about one of our most favorite examples, the pizza restaurant, at maturity level 2, if you think about pizza restaurant maturity level 2, we actually have one example, one very specific example from Teodora Bożewa life. So Teodora Bożewa, of course, one of our co-authors of Kanban Maturity Model. And what she observed, because she lives in Bilbao, and she had one of her favorite pizza restaurants where she ordered pizza, and she noticed that there is some pattern. So there are some days that pizza is perfect, very tasty, and really great, and she really enjoys it. But there are some days when it's not. So she tried to find the pattern, why it happens like this. And the situation that influenced Tasty Pizza was the manager. So if the owner, the manager of the pizza restaurant was there, the staff was more motivated to prepare perfect pizza. The other days, sometimes it was okay, sometimes it was not. So what Theodora as a customer learned back then was that she should order pizza only when the owner is in the pizza restaurant. Other days, maybe not necessarily. And what's the difference right now between maturity level 2 and 3 is that at maturity level 3, you are fit for purpose. So your pizza will be always perfect and always meeting customer needs, no matter if the owner is there or not. So the process is very stable. Customers are always happy, and the whole flow and delivery are very predictable. But maturity level 3 is still very tricky from the business perspective. And I will use my example here because 11, 12 years ago, I was an owner of a cafe and bakery. So I had my cafe and I also made my own cakes for this cafe. And now looking from this 12 years perspective, I could say that I was maturity level 3 organization because my customers were happy. I met their demands. I was able to deliver the service in a predictable manner, and the feedback that I received from them was very good. But what was my problem? Why I'm here talking to you about Kanban and not making cakes anymore? The problem was that my business was not risk hedged. So for a few months in a row, I had to inject some cash to my business from my private savings. And when the savings ended and I was not able to inject cash anymore to my business, I had to close it. So although my customers were very happy and I met their expectations, so from this perspective, I was maturity level 3, I wasn't risk hedged. I didn't generate enough revenue to be able to survive on the market. And maturity level 4 is when everyone is happy. So not only customers, but business owners, stakeholders, all stakeholders, your vendors, your shareholders, your employees. At maturity level 4, everyone is happy. Your business is stable, your business is profitable. So when you think about most of your restaurants that you like to go to and that are there already for a few years, 10 years, maybe even longer, they are probably maturity level 4 business. So maturity level 4 is the level where we want to be. This is the level where we are happy, and this is the level which is stable and which we strive to achieve, helping organizations to be. Now maturity level 5 and 6. 5 is simply the best. So this is the best in class, the best in the market, the best in the market segment. So again, thinking about our restaurants, maybe you have 50 favorite restaurants in Melbourne or in Auckland, but only 1, 2 of them have Michelin stars. Okay, so they are the best in class. They are somehow sometimes awarded. They are creating the benchmark for everyone else in the market. And maturity level 6 organization is not only the best in class, but this is also the organization that is able to reinvent itself. So in the moment of crisis, they are able to survive not by accident, like we observe right now. We have COVID situation for more than a year already, and there are businesses that collapsed. There are businesses that survived, and looking at this that survived, some of them survived by accident, and some of them survived because they were ready to survive. So when we think about maturity level 6 organization, this is the one that is able to reinvent itself. The moment of crisis is like when life says, I'm checking, but also when there is no crisis, this organization is still innovating and is still looking for new opportunities. So this is the way that you may want to go, that you may want to take the journey. Set information set and not on the other hand is that around 80% of the market is maturity level 0 or 1. So if you feel that you are maturity level 1, don't be too cruel to yourself. You are the most of the market. Another more or less 12% of the market is maturity level 2, and another 8% is maturity level 3 and more. And this more is really, really small portion of the market. I say that on one hand, this is sad information. On the other hand, it's not, because we see there is still a lot of room for improvement. So there is a lot of work for all of us to do. So now, having the 7 levels of the organizational maturity, we see that we have patterns of Kanban implementation that we can understand for each maturity level. And having these patterns, we are able to avoid 2 problems that we had with Kanban implementation. So on one hand, it was overreaching. So situation that you are maturity level 0 and someone comes to you and asks you to deliver the results of Monte Carlo simulation, okay? When you are maturity level 0, you are overburdened. You don't know what to do first. You have millions of tasks and you don't know where to start. You are sitting overtime. Maybe you are spending nights at work. These are your problems, okay? Maturity level 0, you don't care about the results of Monte Carlo simulation. At maturity level 0, you try to survive. So this is one of the examples of overreaching that I see most of the time. So someone comes to you with a fancy idea, which is really cool, but you are simply not ready for it. The other failure mode is false summit plateau. So this is when you are maturity level 0, maturity level 1, and you think that you have achieved everything already. So having this KMM, you are able to see that there is something more that you should try to achieve. And all 6 general practices that you know from your classes or from your personal studies are now broken down into more than 150 specific practices, which are modeled to each maturity level. And what you can see here is the evolutionary change model. And this is also part of our another poster, which is called evolutionary change. And if you look at this right-hand side picture, you can see some happy faces on the top, happy faces at the bottom, and very unhappy face in the middle. So your happy face, this is what we call the old equilibrium. This is the state where you feel okay, where everything is nice. There is kind of happy inertia. So there is some predictability, some stability. And this is the level where you may feel this, where you may reach this false summit plateau. So you think that you have done everything already, nothing else can be implemented. So now the role of Kanban is to make you unhappy. And I always say that, you know, if you do Kanban and you don't feel the pain, probably you do something wrong, because Kanban hurts. And normally in the organization, there is already some stress, which motivates you to improve. If there is no stress and you feel happy and you are at this false summit plateau, the consultants like Silke or Daniel will come to you and they will inject some stress to your organization, okay? So they will make you a bit unhappy. And now it's on their shoulders to not make you too much unhappy, because then you will tell them that they are fired. So they will make you a bit unhappy because they want you to be motivated to change something, to see that there is still something to improve. And people who use Kanban Maturity Model know how to do it, know how to take you through this unhappy stage and take you to the level higher in terms of maturity. So if you are maturity level 1, you feel great because you just implemented your visualization. The consultant will come to you and will show you what you can do more. So they will inject some stress. And why we have this whole model, and when you look at our practice poster, which is here, you will see that there are some, at each of the level, you have 2 sub-levels. One of them is transition, another one is consolidation. And we introduce these transition levels because we don't want to stress organization too much. So these transition level practices are there to help you to go from level to level, but not inject too much stress, not ask you to do something what you are not ready for. These more advanced practices are at the consolidation levels. The transition practices are just between levels to help you to go through the change. And this is the picture that you probably have seen multiple times, because this is the picture from this book. This is the book from 2010, our Kanban Bible, also called Kanban Blue Book. And we use this picture many times. But what you can see here on this picture is what illustrates the formula for evolutionary change. And there are three elements of this formula: the stressor, the reflection mechanism, and the leadership. And now I will go back and I will show you all of these three elements here. So the first element is the stressor. So the stressor is something what makes you unhappy. So in this whole situation that you see here, this whole discussion shows you that there is already some stress in the organization. Analysts say, I'm stuck. There is you see it, there are multiple tasks assigned to him and he doesn't know what to do. Developer says, I'm too busy. And tester says, I'm idle, so he has nothing to do. There is work that stuck somewhere before the testing. So you have these three people and they have the stress, they feel the stress, they talk about the stress. And there are two feedback mechanisms that you can see, at the first glance. So the first feedback mechanism is this discussion. So maybe they are holding daily meeting, maybe they are at the retrospective, they are talking about what's wrong, and that they feel this pain. And the second feedback reflection mechanism here is the feedback loop that Kanban board provides. So Kanban board visualizes what's wrong in this situation. And having only stress and reflection mechanism and having this discussion, it will be just complaining. So it will be like a therapy session. Everyone is moaning, but nothing happens. And then we have this fourth person here. And this fourth person is the third element of our formula for evolutionary change. So this is the act of leadership. So there should be at least one person who is going to say, let's do something about it. Okay, guys, no more complaining. Let's do something about it. So we need these three elements: the stressor, the reflection mechanism, and the act of leadership to introduce the change to the organization. And this picture here, again, it shows you how this whole process works. So you have your old equilibrium. Then you start to observe some stress. Either this is the stress that you see by yourself, or this is the stress that your Kanban coach is going to inject. And then you have this unhappy stage where you look for some reflection mechanism. You look for your feedback loops that will tell you what's wrong. And now through this whole process and taking acts of leadership, you will go slowly again to this new equilibrium. So you will grow in terms of your maturity. And this new equilibrium very soon should become the old equilibrium when you will feel that you need to improve again. So this is the KMM in the nutshell. I just summarized for you the 500 pages of the book. And now Kanban by numbers. So now we have the 7 levels. And we can talk right now about Kanban using some particular numbers. And we'll start from 1 and not from 0. So at maturity level 1, we have our team Kanban board. And this team Kanban board is already the board from the consolidation maturity level 1, which is already kind of advanced practice of taking people together, putting them on one board, all together with their work, with their tasks. At this level, yet we talk about tasks. And you can see here some very important elements that should already appear at maturity level 1. So you have a very basic process, which says we have a backlog, which is unlimited. And then we have next and in progress columns, which are limited in terms of work in progress. And then we have done. What's important here on this board is this next column. and the fact that this is limited. And because this next column creates a buffer between backlog and in progress, and it creates buffer not only on the board. This is not that important. What's more important, it creates a buffer in your head. So what our brain doesn't like is this open backlog, the backlog which is not limited, because we don't like to feel the situation that there is no limit. There is, thousands of items and we don't know what to choose. When you introduce this buffer, which is limited, you will provide a huge relief to your brain, because now you choose from 3 items, not from unlimited queue of items. And just looking at this picture, I wouldn't believe what I'm saying right now, but I tried it. So if you didn't try it, please try it, and you will see that it really works. So creating a buffer, limiting the working buffer, will help your brain to think about what you should do next. At maturity level 1, we have 3 very basic feedback loops, which you can hold in cadences, regular cadences. So we have team Kanban meeting. I'll start from this one. At team Kanban meeting, you meet, you talk about your process, you talk about your workflow, you look at your impediments, your blockers, and you discuss what you can do about it. So not only complaining that we have blockers, but now take active leadership, let's do something about it. Then we have team replenishment meeting. This is when you decide what you pull from the backlog to the next. This is when you butter for pulling from backlog to the next. Then until the next replenishment, you don't butter with the backlog anymore. And team retrospective, this is our improvement meeting, when we want to look to the past, see what happened and what we can do to improve it. The metrics that you can start collecting at maturity level 1. You can start introducing per person WIP limits and observe these work in progress limits, the same at the team level. You can start, you should start measuring your lead time, local lead time. And if you don't measure lead time yet, like very, very basic lead time, just 2 dates, start date, end date. If you don't measure them yet, please do so, okay? And do it for yourself. Your future you will thank your today you for doing that. Because this way you start to collect some data that will help you to make more conscious decision. And then you can also measure the rate of tasks completed. And it's really important to measure this completed task, to see this completed task, and also to celebrate completing the tasks, because the value of achievement is very important for us. If you finish something, then your brain starts to create some serotonin, and we really like the serotonin because it helps us to feel better. So please provide some serotonin every day for yourself. Maturity level 2. What you can see here is the board, which represents the transition between maturity level 1 and 2. And what you can see here could be represented at 2 separate boards. So there is a pool of ideas, next, ongoing, and done, which is one board. And the other one is the pool of ideas, done, ongoing, and done for testing. And this done column, which is like overlap column for development and testing, is on one hand the end state for development. On the other hand, this is a buffer for testing. And what they did here, they took these 2 separate boards and they put them all together on one visualization, maybe one physical board, maybe one online board. So now what we do, we don't ask people, so now sit and design your whole end-to-end process. What we rather do, we say, okay, so your team has one Kanban board, your team has another Kanban board. Let's see how these 2 boards talk to each other. Can we make them one board? Or maybe we should keep them separated, but instead we introduce some feedback loop that will help us to talk. What you can measure at maturity level 2, because this is the level you remember where customer consciousness of the fact that we have the customer appears, we should start looking more closely at our demand and the capability. So how well we are able to meet our customer demand, and also what is our capacity to meet this demand. If you didn't do it, this is the moment when you should really start measuring your lead time. So to introduce some timestamps for receiving requests from the customer, so starting date, end date, to know what is your lead time. Due date performance, so how good you are meeting your service level agreements, or maybe your due dates, because you may probably have them yet. And aging of work in progress items. It's important to see how your items are aging and what is the ratio of the aging time versus the real work time. Okay, now at maturity level 2, we had 4 feedback loops. Now we had 3, but I deliberately decided to leave this blocker clustering here because, oops, sorry, in this book, you will find blocker clustering at maturity level 2. Okay, but time flies, 6 months, and we learn and we learn and we learn, and also our authors learn and our community learns. What we noticed is that blocker clustering, which I'm going to spend a bit more time in a moment on, this is something that emerges at maturity level 2, but it's not required for you to achieve maturity level 2. So that's why this blocker clustering, which was originally maturity level 2 feedback loop, was moved to maturity level 3 right now. And this is the change that you don't see yet in the printed book. And the other feedback loops that you have here is the workflow Kanban meeting. So right now we go level higher. No team Kanban meeting, but we look at the workflow that we have designed. Workflow, again, workflow replenishment meeting. So we decide what to pull from the pool of ideas, but to the workflow, not necessarily to the team buffer. And flow review, this is something what is level higher than team retrospective. So this is the meeting, the review where you decide on your improvements to the process. Maturity level 3, I think the most complex is where you become fit for purpose. So here you don't see separated boards. You now have end-to-end pull system. And it's important that this is already, like full and major pull system. So no push anymore. Wherever you can, you introduce work in progress limits. And you observe how you can pull items, how these items travel through the system from ideas to the final stage, which in this case is deployment ready. What you should also visualize at this level are the blocking issues and defects. And again, it's important to measure lead time not only for your features, for your main items, value-adding items or primary items, but also at the blockers. And maybe the defects that are the blocker for you. So measure lead time for all of your items, because probably your defects will be separate work item type and you want to show them separately to your customers. And now about the blocker clustering. So when you already see that you have these blockers in your system and you want to avoid as much of them as possible, you should collect them. So if you see that you have removed blocker, this issue is closed. Don't throw it away. Collect information about the blockers and then conduct the blocker clustering. So collect all of these blockers over a period of time. Say you do it once per month, collect them over a month. Cluster them by the source or by the cause of this blocker, and then analyze what was the risk associated to this blocker. What was the likelihood and impact of this risk? And when you do the root cause analysis, what caused the blocker? What you can do to reduce the number of these blockers. If you are not able yet to reduce these blockers, to remove these blockers, what you can do to mitigate the blocker, and the same trying to mitigate the risk. Maturity level 3, what changes here? We have service risk review, which is a consolidation practice, because blocker clustering is transition practice, and service request review is still a bit higher. This is consolidation practice. What's new here is improvement suggestion review, so we keep it separate. To gather all of the ideas for improvements and talk which of them we would like to introduce. Then you had flow review, which is now two separate reviews, which is service request review for upstream Kanban and service delivery review for downstream Kanban. So you separate flow review, two parts. And then we have workflow Kanban meeting, which doesn't change, replenishment meeting for the whole system, and delivery planning meeting, which is new. Don't be scared. I will make a small disclaimer at the end of talking about the feedback loops. Metrics at maturity level 3. So maturity level 3, we start to collect fit for purpose related metrics. So what you can see here is part of our poster, another one which I have here on the wall. And I'm not going to spend too much time on it right now because in a month's time we have fit for purpose webinar. So we'll be talking specifically about it. What else? We look at discard rate in our upstream system, aborted items in our downstream system. We start to look at the flow efficiency. So your touch time versus lead time, how efficient you are. And this is the moment when we look at the little slow. Again, you can start using little slow earlier, but it's not required until maturity level 3. And level 4, this is already rather mature Kanban board, the visualization. This is when you start hedging the risk using capacity allocation by work item types or by classes of service. So this is where you also introduce the classes of booking for your customers. So how you treat your customers, how urgent is demand from different types of customers. And this is already the major maturity level for Kanban boards. I realize the font is very small here, but I will quickly take you through it. So in the top, this red top quadrant, you have strategy review. So now we think about our whole organization and the strategy of our organization. Then we have operations review, which we call Kanban of Kanbans meeting. So we don't talk about team level, we don't talk about the workflow level even. We now look again at our operations, how we do. And then we have organizational risk review. So again, a level higher than our system risk review. And the rest of the feedback loops remains the same. And now disclaimer. Because if you read Kanban Maturity Model, you will see that there are more or less 30 feedback loops that KMM suggests you to introduce. Please, if you go back tomorrow, because evening already for you, if you go back tomorrow to your work, don't talk to your colleagues and to your managers. You know, I was at the webinar and this Anna told me that we need to introduce 30 feedback loops right now. No, please don't do. They will hate you. And this will be the easiest you can deal with. So my private tips and tricks for introducing feedback loops. First of all, when you learn about the feedback loops from the Kanban Maturity Model or any other source of knowledge about Kanban, look at what you have already. If the feedback loops that you have already are good, they provide you with information, they provide you with value. And after the meeting, after the review, after, I don't know, looking at the board, you know what's the outcome, then don't change anything, okay? You don't even need to change the name of the feedback loop. That's okay. Do what you do right now. If you look at your feedback loops and you see that there is something what you could improve, or you maybe just keep the review for the sake of keeping review because someone told you it has to be done every Friday morning, but you feel it could be improved, take what you have learned and improve what you have. Again, don't introduce anything new, don't change anything, just improve what you already have. And the third instance is introducing something new. So this is the situation when you really see something that would help you, but there is no place where you could add this feedback loop. then introduce new feedback loop. And also here, there are 2 stages of introducing something new. Before you schedule a new meeting for your colleagues and your managers in the calendar, look whether maybe you have a meeting already, maybe you have a feedback loop already, which can be enhanced. One of the most popular is the blocker clustering. So what people tell me when I consult the organization, when I teach them, what they tell me is, oh, there is a blocker clustering. This would really help us. We didn't have it. We should introduce blocker clustering. But again, to avoid adding overhead, so the last thing you should do is adding another overhead, another meeting in your calendar. Maybe you are able to add this blocker clustering to something that already exists. Maybe you keep kind of improvement review retrospective once per month. Maybe instead of adding a new meeting, it's worth to extend a bit this existing meeting and just do this blocker clustering for another 15, 30 minutes. And only if it's not possible, then introduce new meeting, okay? But please don't make your colleagues hate you by adding something new to their calendars. Metrics at maturity level 4, raw mature detailed flow efficiency and some probabilistic forecasting and simulation. So I told you about Monte Carlo simulation. Of course, you can do it earlier, but at maturity level 4, it starts to make sense. If you are maturity level 0, maturity level 1, and you have no idea what your lead time is, Monte Carlo simulation is not going to solve your problems. You have other problems to solve. So you can see right now when you have the 7 levels of maturity, we can implement Kanban by numbers. And this by numbers means basically that we just take our Kanban maturity model and we help organization to grow. How you do it? First, you pick the pattern that fits your organization. So you need to decide where you are. It's not that simple because we don't live in the black and white world. And in most of the cases, you are not able to say, okay, I'm maturity level 1 right now. Cool, I know what to do. If you start mapping your practices, you will see that probably you are spread somewhere between 0 and 2, maybe 1 and 3. Even if you are maturity level 1, you may see some practices from level 4. But you should see where your practices are most dense. You should look at your culture, which is very important, and then decide what are your next steps. So first, pick your pattern and then manage your evolution to deeper implementation, greater organizational maturity, using Kanban Maturity Model as your guide. So this is what we say very seriously, and we take full responsibility for this statement. Kanban Maturity Model provides you with a pattern which will suit every situation. No matter whether you work in IT, in finance, in marketing, HR, in the law departments, until you operate in the knowledge work, until you deliver service, Kanban will be able to help you. Okay? And now I also promised I will show you where to find KMM 1.3. So this is a place where you can find KMM 1.3 content. So anytime Theodora or David write something new and they tell me this is okay to publish, I just publish it. So we already have a lot of KMM 1.3 content at KMM.plus. So I really encourage you to create an account there. It's totally for free. I don't ask you for any credit card numbers or any payment in advance. There is, of course, some limited content and the free version, but you can see if this is something what you like and maybe you would like to learn more. Yeah, so please join KMM Plus. And there is also kanbanmaturitymodel.com. But this page is still active, but it's no longer updated. So all updates, all new information, new posters are here. And you can download all of these posters and also read some free chapters of the book. Here we keep this page for the reference for the users that already know it, but it's no longer being updated. This is it for me. Thank you very much for spending this time with me. I will stop sharing right now. If needed, I will share again, but I would like to listen to your questions right now. Oh, and we have much more people. Cool.
Yeah, there were quite a few more people joining. Some had to jump off because I think the Europeans have kind of stand-ups and all these kind of things. And
Yeah, it's almost 9 a.m. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Anna. Anya. Anya, both is fine, I've learned.
Yes, both is fine.
And so are there any questions? And there weren't actually any questions in the chat so far while you were talking. But if people do have questions, just unmute and shout out, I would say.
Hi, it's Jo. Not a question, just an observation. Thank you, Anya, so much for this. It was very clear, and I'm working in an organisation where we're talking about Kanban, but your presentation gave a very clear way forward to start thinking about where we're at and where we might go and have that conversation. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And Daniel, you do great work too. You know, it's not just
Thanks, Jo. As always.
And Jo, did you have a chance to take a look at the posters from the model?
I have briefly, but one of our members, my colleagues, Luke Jenkin, is right into it. So I'll be talking more to him about it. Yeah. So I'll look more at the posters.
Cool, because I asked about it. They're very helpful. Of course, they don't provide you the whole content, but they are good and helpful to visualize some stuff. So great to hear that you did it already.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Kanban University has done, or David Anderson School of Management has done such a good work with these posters. There's so much information on them. It's incredible.
And actually, guys, I'm doing this poster. So if you want to see something more, just let me know. Because I'm almost done for the, I'm done for the Kanban Maturity Model 1.2. I'm doing the posters for 1.3. So anytime we have something new, we have new posters too. But if you would like to see something else, or maybe you would like to visualize something from the other angle, another perspective, just please shout out, let me know. You can contact me on LinkedIn, or I will drop my LinkedIn and email in the chat. So please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to hear from you. Guys, because we do it for you.
So Anya, with a new group going to Kanban, what posters would you start with? Like, we don't want to overwhelm them. Is there a minimum set or a single poster that's the starting point?
I would say the practice poster, but this is really overwhelming. Yeah. So when people see this, like, oh my God, where should I start? What is this even? Yeah. Why I like practices poster is when you spend some time on it. So you are not terrified at first glance, but you decide to, face this monster. It really helps to visualize where you are right now. So maybe not to, you can put some stickies on the printed version, or you can just put it to Miro or whatever you want and zoom on it. And then you can put the stickies in Miro to not destroy the printed version. And when you put the stickies on the practices and the cultural values that you observe, then, and you take, these 2 steps away, you look at this poster holistically, then you will see where the practices, where the values are the most dense. So probably this is your current maturity level. You will probably see some outliers, lower, I mean, in maturity, higher on the poster, or lower on the poster, so the higher maturity level. But these are the outliers. So now, what we observe normally during the class when we teach and people do this exercise of using the practice map. So they see, okay, we are probably somewhere maturity level 1 or transitioning to 2. Okay, there are some practices from maturity level 2 and 3 that we observe. Okay, let's use them as kind of an anchor. We have a hook already because we started to see more. We started to see that there is something else that we should look at. So now let's decide how to take our organization towards this higher maturity levels. So that's why practice poster, I wouldn't say that this is for everyone. But if you are the one who is responsible for driving this change and you took this act of leadership, let's do something about it, and then you can use this poster. For everyone else, I recommend this pizza poster that you have seen, because it visualizes and explains rather in a plain language what the maturity levels are. And it uses this pizza example. I know people are tired with pizza. So in some of my webinars, I replace pizza with ice cream. So maybe for your next webinar, I will talk about ice cream, not pizza this time. So, but yeah, pizza explains a lot. So I would use pizza poster for let's call them newbies. Or there is also a poster which is called overview. I have it here, but I would have to, do the mishmash with my laptop. So there is an overview poster, which also shows maturity level, the benefits, and the cultural values. Yes, benefits, values, and maturity levels. So it's also good poster to show to people. And there are also some others, like evolutionary change, like culture poster, which I personally, I see them as very, very important. But again, not everyone for start, but for you, for your colleagues who are more into this topic.
Thank you so much. Generous answer. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
I got a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Not sure. What's going through my head is the business agility body of work, if you like, SAFE, and then Kanban, and all of them are attempting in one way or another to try and help a business transform to either a prescribed way or maybe a less prescribed way, in the case of Kanban, way of working. I'm wondering in my head about the overlap, coexistence, or not of those in particular. If I'm an organization, I'm going, where should I be looking? What sorts of people should I be getting into my organization to help me improve? Because they all claim to effectively consume the whole organization in the way of working at some point. So that's what's on my mind.
Okay, so before I answer, just two stories. The first one is the story that we hear in the class. Maybe not a story. What people tell in the class is that when we ask them to do this exercise with the practice map, to map some of the practices that may observe. So what they say, we don't use Kanban in the organization. I'm not able to do this exercise. But I normally say that it doesn't matter, because this is the model of organizational maturity, not Kanban maturity. So although you may see some practices which are specific for Kanban, like team Kanban board, if you have visualization which shows the work of the team and you limit work in progress, you doesn't have to do Kanban. You just do it and you still have this practice. So you can use it. The other thing I wanted to mention before I answer your question, during the webinar, it was 2 days ago. It was a webinar with David. He talked about dependency management, and we had kind of similar questions. So there was one of the attendees who said that in her organization, she has right now, multiple teams, multiple departments. One of them start using Kanban, some of them use Scrum, some of them tried SAFe, some of them are still waterfall. Yeah, there's this like hard waterfall. And what should she do? Yeah, and so I will answer your question the same David answered her. So with Kanban, you start with what you do now. You don't introduce anything new. You don't reorganize. You don't do any revolutionary change. You just look at what you have right now and you improve what you have right now. And Kanban really nicely work with all of these methods. I tried personally Kanban, some of them were more or less sneaky Kanban implementations. But I did one with SDLC, so system development lifecycle, software development lifecycle, sorry. And my organization was, very, very waterfall. It was 200 years organization. It doesn't mean that it has to be waterfall, but it was. And we did Kanban in this organization, and it worked. So it was one of my projects. Another one was, we tried to do Kanban, but team was very into Scrum. So I told them, okay, let's do Scrum. You like Scrum, you did Scrum, you know Scrum. Let's do Scrum, that's fine. So we started to work in Scrum, which was very difficult. Again, remember, waterfall organization trying to work with Scrum, not even having the product owner. I was the product owner back then, but you can imagine no decision power. So it was very difficult. But what I did with this team, we introduced some Kanban practices, and they didn't even know that they are doing Kanban. So they suffered a lot doing Scrum because organization was very not user-friendly for that. And every day our Scrum Master opened for us the burn down chart, and our burn down chart looked like this. Yeah. So no down, actually, only up. And we suffered every day looking at this burn down chart. But after a few months of working, I showed them the cumulative flow diagram. And if you ever see the definition of cumulative flow diagram in Wikipedia or wherever, I say that their cumulative flow diagram should be a picture of ideal cumulative flow diagram. All of their lines were like this. So they were Kanban team saying that they are doing Scrum in waterfall organization. But for them realizing that this is not the problem with the methods or methodology of the framework they use, but the problem sits in how the process is designed. And when we started to think more about redesigning the process rather than focusing strictly on whether it should be Kanban or Scrum or waterfall, so this freeing the mind from the methods helps to improve the flow. But again, this was specific for this team. It worked other way for the other team, and it's going to work other way for you. That's why this is inconvenient, very inconvenient, but Kanban every time has to be customized to the current situation. And I'm not sure whether it answers your question or not, but just to summarize shortly, start where you are now, whether it's safe, Scrum, waterfall, Kanban, safe. I thought about so maybe less this time, and it will help you. Just look for the things that can help you to improve.
Yeah, it was helpful to some extent. I suppose I was thinking more about the impact to the whole of organization, or the fact that all of those different things attempt to change the organization completely. If you think about maturity model, we want to get up those levels potentially if that's desirous. And I get the whole thing that Kanban start where you are. But I was sort of thinking about like the goal on the North Star, that really big goal of how do we transform the organization into being more awesome in some way. They all suggest that maybe that they are the way forward to get there.
Step by step. I'm not sure, David, do you recall, or maybe you learned about the J curve? Because it's from Virginia Satir. So the J curve, if you give me 1 second, I will be able to quickly find the visualization of that. I just need to open one slide, okay? So please stay with me. Where are you, Virginia? Here you are. Okay, got it. So I will share my screen now. Okay, so this is the J curve, and it's not something good Kanban introduced. This comes from, it's also called the Satir model. So Virginia Satir was a therapist. She's been working with the families in crisis. She helped them to go through the crisis. What she created was this J curve, which was supposed to show how people go through crisis, but now we can also use it to talk about how people perceive change at all in their life. So you start with some, as we called it, the old equilibrium, some status quo, and then you start introducing the change. And when you introduce the change, your level of safety, your internal safety drops down heavily. And the bigger the change is, the deeper you go. And at some point, you will start to dig out from this hole, but it requires patience. And again, the biggest change, the more drastic change is, the more patience you would need, which means that if you are at the lower maturity levels, like 0, 1, I would say even 2, if you dig down in the hole with the huge change, your people, but most of all the management who pays for this, and when you are at the bottom of this hole, they lose their patience because they see, okay, we had some initial situation, maybe it wasn't perfect, but right now with this coach, with this consultant, with this whoever came to us, it's even worse and we hate it. We need to fire this person. We don't want to see them anymore, okay? We've been in the bad world, now we are in the hell. So this is something what people, when they are in the big change, they normally don't see. That they are in the hole, there is the light in the tunnel, but they just don't see this light yet. They think that this light is the train, not the entrance. So what we offer instead, and I will make it bigger. So again, the same schema. So drop in the safety level, and a lot of patience required. So this is where failure happens. What we offer instead with Kanban is to avoiding this situation, avoiding this failure modes, with doing it evolutionary. So you introduce the change, small change, not the big organization, but the small change. You evaluate fitness for purpose. Because this change was small, you are able to quickly see the result, and you are able to quickly verify whether it works for you or not. And if it's working, you move on. If it's not working, you come back to the previous stage and you start over, introducing some modification or maybe other change. And sometimes the small changes can take, 10 minutes, and I will give my example in a moment. Sometimes they can take a few days, sometimes they can take a month. But this change is small, and this way you help people to rewire their brain, because the big changes don't rewire people's brain, they just attack people's brain. With small changes, with this evolutionary change in Kanban, we do it slowly, but it's user-friendly for people's brain. And 10 minutes change, after one of the training, I had a brilliant idea. It was Friday afternoon, so I had 2 days to sleep over with my brilliant idea, and it was still brilliant on Monday morning. I came to work, I started to introduce it. It was pre-COVID, so we had our whiteboard. I started to introduce the change on our board. My colleagues were like, okay, maybe it's not that brilliant, but let's try. And this brilliant idea survived for 10 minutes. Okay, it wasn't that brilliant anymore. Everything immediately went to the trash, and it was still okay. I wasn't emotionally attached to this idea because it was a very small idea, very small change. It was okay for me to revoke it. It was okay for everyone to try it. No one hurt. And by introducing also small changes, the drop in safety is none or very small. The patience which is required to see the results of the change is not that huge. So this is what Kanban offers instead. So in Kanban, you won't see huge organization. Sometimes you do, but I guess this is another webinar to talk about how you introduce change and the different levels of the change. So there are 6 levels, how you introduce change. And the 6th one, so the latest instance is if you are a dinosaurs, and there is a meteor. So sometimes you just need to hit your organization with this meteor, because otherwise they are not going to change. But this is the last thing that you should do. And before that, there are still five other things that you can try. So yeah, maybe we should have another webinar about the change introduction.
I'll book you straight in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Are there any more questions?
And thanks for that, David, because this is a problem that I would say most of the people have. So thanks for that.
Cool.
And yeah, I started to write the contact to me. So I put my LinkedIn if you want to get in touch with me, and this is my email. So feel free to write with any ideas, questions. I don't promise I will answer immediately, but I will. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, you are quite quick in responding. Do you actually want to explain what Movius is? That might be a bit confusing.
Oh yeah,
now.
so Movius is the Movius Group Europe is like a mother company for Kanban University, David Chandler's School of Management, Movisoft, and Kanban books. This is something new that will appear soon. So I'm working for Movius Group, and specifically for Movisoft, so our software and our applications branch, and also for David Chandler's School of Management, which is our training and school. So this is what we are doing teaching.
All one thing. Okay. Well, folks, last chance to ask a question. 1, 2, 3.
Sold.
Right? Yes. I'd say thank you very much, Anja.
Thank you
for popping over to Oceania today. It was really cool to have you, and great insights on the Kanban Maturity Model. Really cool explanations. And I was personally very happy to have a female here for once.
Oh.
Yeah. And we'll
Okay,
see you again in a month's time.
Yep.
And we are looking very much forward to that.
Yeah, so fit for purpose. I always say this is my huge coming out because Kanban doesn't own the first place in my heart. It's fit for purpose.
Right.
And I will try to
really
I will try to spread this love.
You showed that fit for purpose post actually once in the background during
yes, it's still there. Yep, it's right there.
So yeah. So I'm really curious as well, and I'm sure everybody else is, and we're really looking forward to have you back here in May. It is.
Yes, it is May.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to see you again. So have a great night. Okay.
Thank you. Great session.
Bye bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Anja.
Thanks.
Cheers, Dave. See you, mate.
Cheers. Bye.
You still there, Silke?